Welcome to Baddie, a monthly podcast by For the Breast of Us, the first breast cancer community for all women of color, where we share real-life experiences, information, and education to help you live your best life after a breast cancer diagnosis. Welcome to Baddie. Welcome to Baddie.
Hey girl, hey. My name is Tesha and I am a breast cancer survivor and a Baddie volunteer here at For the Breast of Us, a community for women of color that has been impacted by breast cancer. And today I am here with Miss Morgan, or Dr. Morgan rather, who is a breast cancer survivor as well as a patient advocate. Hi, Dr. Morgan.
Hi, Tesha. How are you?
Hi, well, thank you. And thank you for coming on today. So before we get started, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you so lovely introduced me, I'm Dr. Morgan Mitchell or Morgan, whichever you like to choose. I am a PhD biochemist and professor, cancer researcher, and life science product manager. I currently am a professor at a medical school here in the Houston area. And I'm passionate about education. I'm a lifelong student. I've been in school my whole life. So I really appreciate education, awareness, and just having these conversations. It started a divine intervention is what I call it. I just happened to be, changing into my nighttime wear one night in the summer of 2020. And I just happened to brush across my breast and I felt something and I said, oh, that's weird. And I just didn't think anything of it. I shrugged it off. The next night, again, divinely inspired intervention happened. And the same thing happened. I said, And so I went into my mother's bedroom. I had her feel it. And she said, yeah, there's something there. Make an appointment with your OBGYN. Now, I want to stress this fact that this was, at the beginning of COVID. So
Wow.
we were on lockdown. People were dropping like flies. It was chaotic. Everybody, we didn't know what to do, right? And I want to say that because we were at such a standstill, again, that's God Himself. Because if I had been busy doing my normal day-to-day life, I would have shrugged it off completely. And because of that, I might not be here right now.
Well, we are so thankful that you were obedient, first of all. Your story is actually a little similar to mine. I'm a 9-year breast cancer survivor, and I found my lump. Thank you. And
Congrats.
I found my lump the same as you. I was actually doing Zoom that afternoon, and it brushed up. And my arm brushed up against my breast, and I felt a lump. And called my mother. My mom said the same thing. Call your doctor. So did that, and that's where my journey began. So today we are going to be talking about healthcare advocacy. And we know that as women of color, there is a lot of power when we collectively and actively advocate for ourselves and for our community. How important is that? Talk to me a little bit about how important do you think advocacy in the African American community and for people of color, how important is that to be able to have that knowledge and be able to just be more proactive with our health?
Yeah,
with our
Tesha, this is increasingly becoming a popular topic in terms of
Mhm,
healthcare and
mhm,
illness
mhm.
and disease, and I'm so happy about that because it is almost the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Um, as the pandemic happened,
Mhm,
we learned a lot about ourselves, our self-care. Self-care has become increasingly popular.
mhm.
And again, I am excited about this. Now, I feel as though it may be more so of a struggle for African American women just because of our history
Mhm.
and cultural boundaries.
Yeah.
I when I first got diagnosed, I'm a very open person. When I first got diagnosed, I put it on social media. My mom was not happy about this.
Mhm.
She was saying, this is private, this is a health matter, you need to keep it in the house. And that's how she was raised. And she was raised by a nurse. And it
Mhm.
was still these cultural generations of these cultural traditions
Yeah.
and just how we were raised, generation after generation after generation. My mom, you know, does what her mom taught her,
Right.
and my grandmother does what her mom taught her, right?
Absolutely.
And she was raised, you do not talk about health outside of the home. You do
That's right.
not talk about illness. If someone passed, you do not ask how. That's seen as disrespectful.
It's disrespectful.
Um,
Right.
it's seen as, why is she all up in our business? She needs
Mhm.
to mind her own business. And so all of these things make a very large difference in the way that African Americans, and especially African American women, um, sort of deal with their health,
Yeah.
and sort of deal with, what they're going to choose to say to people and what they're not,
Mhm.
um, who they are going to allow to help them and who they're not. And it's a very, very, very difficult thing for African American women, just because again, we put, we're the head of the household.
Right.
We put everybody, literally everybody, in front of us
We put everybody first.
except for
Exactly.
ourselves.
Mhm.
And I'm here to say that you have to take care of you, because if you are not okay, nobody else is going to be okay. You have to
Absolutely.
take care of yourself first, just like
Right.
when you're in the plane, right? Put your oxygen mask on first and then tend to your children and your passengers and people next to you. There's a reason why they say that, okay?
Mhm.
You have to be okay in order to make sure everyone else is okay.
Absolutely. And you hit on so many points, so many things that, like you said, in the African American community, it is cultural that we don't talk about illness. We don't talk about family history. And that is so important, um, to know what our family members that have gone before us, what medical issues or what challenges they had, because if we know that, then we can take the necessary precautions and steps to stay on top of our health. A lot of times we don't find out about a illness or something until we get it, and then mom or grandma say, well, your great aunt or your aunt had this. Well, mom, I didn't know.
Right.
If you had told me, then I would have known to, okay, well, I know that aunt so and so had breast cancer. I need to make sure that I need to tell my doctor so that they can make the necessary take the necessary steps so I can start being on top of my health. But we don't talk about that. And we got to get out of that mindset, because like you said, in order for us, because we take care of everybody but ourselves first. And we got to
Yeah.
take us first before we can take care of everybody else. So you hit as they say, you hit the nail on the head with that one.
Yes, and and Tisha, let me say, and everything that you're saying is correct. And let me also say that, yes, what you're saying is we have to get out of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're literally killing ourselves.
Yeah.
I have met so many people who have had breast cancer and they did not tell anybody, not even their children, not even their parents. And they went through it alone. I've had so many people, close family members, have had a person die and they say, I don't know what they died from. It is so imperative
Yeah.
that the relatives, at least the relatives, need to know what the person has died from and what illnesses they have been dealt, so that their children and their children's children and children's children can be around, right? We can look
Absolutely.
out for this before we get diagnosed and
Absolutely.
suffer the same fate.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important for us to become advocates of our own health, because there's not a lot of representation of women of color, especially in the breast cancer community. There's not a lot of representation of us. So we need to be advocates so that we can have that representation, so that we can get better healthcare access, so we can get the research that needs to be researched, and get the data that needs to be gotten, so that we can have better treatments when it comes down to women of color being diagnosed with breast cancer.
Yes.
But one thing that people a misconception that people have about advocacy work and becoming an advocate, that it doesn't have to be scary. You can start with,
Right.
in that you don't have to have all of these political connections and know all these people up in Congress and the White House or whatnot. You can just start by sharing your own story.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that was something that I did when I finished my treatment. I just started by sharing my story,
Mm-hmm.
and you can do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Tesha, I think that's so poignant and important what you said. A lot of people do relate advocacy to something political.
Hmm.
And that's not the case. That's not what we're talking about here.
Not at all.
Um, and also, a lot of people think, okay, to be an advocate, I have to do something huge. I have to write to my congressman, or I have to organize a walk, or something like big.
Yeah,
And that is not the case. Small acts add up to so much greater things.
absolutely.
Um, and, it doesn't take much, if you just give, just a small portion of your time,
Hmm.
you will be reaching so many more people. And the
Absolutely.
term advocate, there's no a distinct
Mhm.
definition in terms of that. You can be an advocate in so many ways. You can be
Absolutely.
an advocate and you don't even have to tell them. No one has to know. You can be anonymous,
Yep.
and again, just small acts add
Mhm.
up to so much greater
Yes.
good for our community. If we had just so many more people doing small things, oh my God, we could
Yeah,
move mountains in terms
absolutely.
of breast cancer.
I mean, just sharing with your family, just sharing what you're going through with your family, so that they could have the knowledge of, okay, well, this is what Tesha went through, or I mean, this is what Morgan went through. So Morgan's telling me that, it's important that I make sure I get my regular screenings every month or every year. Make sure that each month I'm checking my breasts, because I know for me that was one thing that I'll be the first to say I was guilty. I did not do it every month. And now that have gotten breast cancer and I'm in remission, I make sure that I'm a little more um, vigilant now about
Mm-hmm.
checking myself each month. But that's something that, something so small, like you said, is that, when you're in the shower or,
Yeah, yeah. And again, Tisha, this is part of my charge because a 5-minute self-exam that you only have to do once a month can literally be the decision between life and death.
Yes.
Literally, it is so powerful. It is
Absolutely.
so important. And also, I'm here to spread the word. I don't have a family history of breast cancer. It
Mm-hmm.
was not on my radar at all. I
Same
was
here.
too young for self exams and
Mm-hmm.
mammograms,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And again, just like you,
Yeah.
it just happened. We just happened to look up and be fortunate and run across something.
Yeah.
But think about all the people who are not as fortunate as you and I.
Right.
Um, think of all the people who, were too late, who
Mm-hmm.
caught it too late.
Yeah.
And again, you know, literally 5 minutes, you can take 5 minutes
Mm-hmm.
once a month
Yeah.
and do something that can really, really be the difference between whether you are here or
Yeah.
whether you are not here. And I am also part of an alarming and rapidly growing statistic of
Mm-hmm.
women under 40 who
Mm-hmm.
have no family history of breast cancer and
Mm-hmm.
no mutation.
Mm-hmm.
So that means we have to be even more vigilant.
Right.
That means we have to spread the word even more so, because guess
Absolutely.
what? It's up to us to save our culture. Nobody's going to come in here and save Black women. Black women
No,
have to save Black women.
we have to save ourselves, and
We have
that's
to
why.
save ourselves. And
Absolutely.
that's why advocacy is so important. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just about yourself, it's about us. It's
Absolutely.
about it's about us being here for
Mm-hmm.
the long term. I want you to survive, Tesha. I want my sisters to survive. I want
Yes.
my community to
It's
survive.
about-
I want
yes.
my family to survive.
Yeah.
And that means we have to be here in order to do
In
so,
order
right?
to in order to do
We
so,
have
we have to be
so
here.
much more greater things
Mm-hmm.
that we have to do. Um, and I don't know how else to say this, but Black people are magic, and we really are, because when you think about all the
Mm-hmm.
things that we have endured and we're still here, I mean, come on, like
We are
you,
we are a resilient people. We
we,
we are, and like we are magic. We are wonderful and a beautiful people.
we are, and
Yeah.
we want to
And
continue that. And so that
absolutely.
means
And
we have to put
definitely.
in just a little bit of work, can make
Yeah.
all the difference, can make all the difference.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And for those that are listening, again, you don't have to do something big in order to advocate. Sharing your story, that's advocacy work. You're advocating. Sharing with family and friends. And if you get to a point where you may get invited to, be a speaker at an event or at a church or at a community center, you're advocating. And one thing that for the rest of us, they provide resources for you to, if you want to get started advocating for not only yourself but for others. They have resources that can help you, workshops, online platforms toolkits that can help you to get started. So there is information out there that can help you, if you just need that little push. But just start with something small, because like you said, Morgan, we want to be around.
Yes,
We want to be
yes,
around
Tisha.
for a long time, because
Yes, Tisha, yes.
the sad reality is that women of color are diagnosed at later stages of breast cancer. And the sad reality is, when we are diagnosed at later stages, the outcomes are not as hopeful as we want it to be. And in
Mhm.
order for us to bridge that gap, because 40% of women of color die at a higher rate than other communities. And
Mhm.
I don't know about you, that's a big number.
That is a
That
huge
is a
number,
big,
right?
that is a big number.
that
And
that
we
that
need to
is a
do
very large number.
we need to do what we need to, and we need to do whatever it takes to advocate for ourselves so we can shrink that number down.
And teacher, let me just say something. Um, Sharing your story, I think, speaks volumes. But I would like to also say that you don't have to do so, right? I mean, a lot of people are private about their health for
Yes.
various reasons. That's
Hmm.
okay.
Absolutely.
You don't have
You don't
to
have
speak
to.
about it. That's
But
okay. There are other ways that you can advocate, right?
fundraising.
There's so many ways you can
Mhm.
be, a pen pal and write, motivational, sentences or notes to people,
I
or
like
you,
that. Yes.
yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
you could, just be someone who, I know so and so got diagnosed. I'm just
Hmm.
going to cook them a meal
Hmm.
and bring the meal over.
Yep.
I know so and so got diagnosed. I'm just going to ask her, does she want to go and get her nails done
Hmm.
and pick her up, and make the appointment, pick her up and take her there. I know so and so got diagnosed. I'm going to ask, if I can babysit her kids for a few hours, right? All
Showing
of
that
these things
support.
are advocacy. All of
Absolutely.
these things are doing the work.
Hmm.
And these practical things, like you said, these practical things speak so many volumes and they are so helpful. Never think that what you're doing is too small or too
Right.
insignificant. To a person that has heard the words, you have cancer, that is everything. A
That
meal is
is
everything,
everything.
right? Because we're
That
too
is
tired to cook.
absolutely.
You
Yeah.
making a nail appointment and taking me, that is everything because I'm
That
too
is, I'm
tired
telling
to
you.
do so.
Yeah. And then with that, you not only that, but then your body, you're going through, you're stressed because your mind is, you're focusing on trying to get better. And all you want is normalcy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
if you have someone that's coming that says, "Hey, Tisha, you know what? Let's go get something to eat." Or you know what? Like you said, I made a nail appointment for you. Let's go get our nails done.
Exactly.
They have
Even
no idea how huge that is.
exactly. If you say, "Hey, I'm going to clean the kitchen for you tonight,"
Well, you done said something. Right? You done said something.
is that
Because
not
we don't,
music
like you
to
said,
your
we don't have
ears?
the energy to do that.
Yes, exactly,
We're not worrying
exactly,
about we're not worrying about how the house looked. Our mind is
exactly.
focused on, Lord, please let me live.
Mm.
Please give me the treatment that I need so that I can get better. That's all we're
Tisha,
focused
you
on.
you have said so much in that, and I'm glad that you said that. I think another part of advocacy is, um, I've heard recently, you are your own best advocate. Now, yes and
Mhm.
no, right? I want to be realistic and transparent, right?
Okay.
Um, I'm a real person and I'm a real patient.
Mhm.
And you are too, Tisha. And we
Mhm.
have, real things that we're up against, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I want to caution that, yes, you do need to advocate for yourself. Yes,
Mhm.
you do need to speak up for yourself. Definitely. But are you your best advocate? And what you just said really, really touched on my point, and I'm so glad that you said that. Um, it doesn't matter who you are. You could be the CEO of Amazon or whatever.
Mhm.
When you hear the words "you have cancer," that is very, very heavy.
Yes.
And your mind goes to death. Your mind goes to funeral service
Mhm.
arrangements. Your
Mhm.
mind goes to, is my family going to be okay? Is my spouse going to be okay? Are my children going to be okay? Are my grandchildren going to be okay? Your
Right.
mind goes to work. Like, how am I going to be able to work and
Mhm.
gain income? Your mind goes to bills. How am I going to be able to pay
Mhm.
for treatment? Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I want to strongly suggest that yes, you should be your own advocate, but you should not be your sole advocate because, again, you have so much on you.
Mhm.
When you hear those words, that diagnosis, that is very traumatic,
Mhm.
that is life changing,
It is.
and you are in shock.
Absolutely.
I don't care if it runs in your family. I don't care if you're sixth generation. I don't care if you're 85 years old. when you're hit with a diagnosis, you have so much on your shoulders.
Absolutely.
And I want to strongly suggest that, especially in those initial appointments, that you bring a trusted person with you.
Yes.
But also bring a person who, for example, I brought my brother with me. He's an engineer. He's an aerospace engineer. He's very logical and very solutions oriented. Right. So he's like, what do we need to do? When do we need to do it? And how are we going to do it? Right. I did not bring my mom to those initial appointments because she is, and I hate to use these words because I hate when people say that women are too emotional, but me and my mom are both, you know, we're more so emotional, you know, than my brother. Instead, my mom was taking care of home. That's her skill set. She was buying groceries. She was getting meals prepared. She was getting the blanket. She was getting the water. She, you know, that's her skill set. Right. So I brought someone along who, again, I'm a PhD scientist. And when you hear those words, you know, cancer doesn't care what degree you have or whatever.
That goes out the window because all you hear is cancer.
Exactly. And you're in shock. And that is, and people don't understand that. Even though, I mean, you can say, oh, I'm strong, but subconsciously and psychologically, your body does things that may or may not be in your control.
Yeah.
You may blank out and not even realize it.
Exactly.
I'm a scientist, and when those words were spoken to me, and I've said this before, you know, my medical team, my doctors, they were talking to me. Their mouths were moving, but I wasn't really.
I couldn't hear anything.
No, I couldn't catch what they were saying.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to have that advocate. My brother was the one who talked to family members and collected questions and wrote the questions down so that when we had that initial appointment, we had those questions already ready. He came with this notebook and pen. He was the scribe and the note taker.
Yeah.
That is so important.
You really touched it. That is so important to have somebody there with you when you are going to all these appointments. But it also, what am I trying to say? Well, it also, you know, the importance of being in a support group, you know, because you don't want to go through this alone. You want to, and the importance of being in a support group, because you can talk with those that have gone through it. You can ask the questions that you didn't think of when you were at the doctor's office, that you can share it with someone that has gone through it, and they can say, well, oh, you know what, this is what I did. These are the things that I did that when I was experiencing this and this, maybe this can work for you.
And that's so important because I have been in settings where, you know, again, everybody has a different way of dealing with it. Some people are very private, scared, introverted, not ready, you know, and when they get into these support groups and they hear people who are in their exact position speak about what they're going through, how they feel, you know, tips and advice. And these people are blown away because a lot of times, you know, and I say this and it's not taken lightly, but I guarantee you are not the only person on the planet feeling how you feel.
Exactly.
There's at least one other person that feels the same way. And it is so therapeutic when you connect with these people because they understand you on a level that other people may not understand you. You know, being a cancer patient, you know, people who don't have cancer can only say so much to me. Right. You're going to hit a wall. You're going to hit a boundary with me because you don't know what I'm going through. I appreciate everything you're doing. I appreciate the love. I appreciate you being there. But the reality is that you don't know what I'm going through, and you won't because you don't have cancer. And so therefore, I've got to talk to people who have cancer. I've got to talk to
Mm-hmm.
survivors. I've got
Yep.
to talk to people who've been in my position. I've got to talk to people who, are going through chemo. I got to talk to people who've been through chemo.
Yeah.
And that is just so that just speaks volumes when you have a community that you can
Absolutely.
just go to
Yep.
and just be like, hey, y'all, I'm sick of this. I'm hot. I need a wig and I don't know what to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, just sharing when you share your stories, when you're advocating by sharing your stories, someone who was going through that is hearing that story, and they're like, oh, I didn't know that she went through that. I'm going through the same thing. Let
Exactly.
me message her, or even sharing your stories on sharing your story on social media. I know when I was diagnosed, I shared my journey on social media, and I found support groups that helped me. And for the rest of us, I found them. It was after my treatment, but I was so glad that I found this community, because there weren't the support groups that I was in. There weren't women that looked like me. They
Exactly.
were there were older women, but
Yep.
nobody. I was diagnosed at 36,
Yep.
and
Yep.
everyone else were older women, and
Yep.
I couldn't relate. But
Ex-
when I found, for the rest of us and other, now that I'm with them, and I have other organizations that I'm a part of too, that are the target audience are, young women of color. It's like, I'm so glad that these organizations are now surfacing, so that these women now that are now getting diagnosed,
mm-hmm.
they have now these resources. And for
Yes.
me, like you said, when you're sharing your stories and you're having this support group, I know for me, I once I was in remission, this became my platform. And, I created a podcast myself called Tesha's Tea Room. It's called Tesha's Tea Room, the place where conversations conquer cancer. And I use my
Love
platform
that.
for those that need to vent, or we just have chats, and it is a safe space. And know
Mm.
that too, for those that are listening, being an advocate, you want to make it a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to provide support, and again, just sharing your stories, like on social media.
I love
That
Tisha. I love how you say I have the same experience. I got diagnosed. I was 34 years old.
Wow. Okay.
When I went to chemo, I was the youngest person there always.
Mhm. Mhm.
A lot of the support groups, I was the youngest person there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And women of color, there were almost, I mean, it almost was zero. It may have been one,
Yeah.
you know, person of color. And I really felt like, oh my God, I really am alone here.
Yeah.
Those feelings are valid, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you said that, because young women, um, in terms of a breast cancer diagnosis, that experience and that conversation looks very different than a
Yeah.
person who is 75, has been married for 40 years, they
Yep.
got 5 kids, they got
Mhm.
about 50, 11 grandkids
Mhm.
or great grandkids. It's
Mhm.
different, right? And we have to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
We have to acknowledge that, it's happening to people
Yeah.
younger and younger. It is disproportionately, as you said, affecting Black women younger and younger.
Mhm.
We tend to get more aggressive types of breast cancer.
Yes.
We tend to get diagnosed later in
Yes.
the process.
Yes.
All of these things are working against us.
Mhm.
And so, just us having this conversation, and I appreciate you so much, and for
I
the rest of
appreciate you
us,
too.
and so in all the people who are volunteering,
Yeah.
telling their testimony, people behind the scenes. As I said, no task is too small. Like if
Absolutely.
you're the receptionist, okay, thank you for the work that
Exactly.
you do. I appreciate that
Exactly.
with my life.
And that's,
And
yeah,
us having this conversation, because Tesha, we're young Black women. So people who are young and Black and a woman, they're going to listen to us because we look like them.
because we look like them. Absolutely.
Right? You connect and
Power
relate to people who look
Exactly.
like
There's
you.
power in the numbers, and there's
Yeah.
power. We get
Oh, yeah.
together.
Oh,
Oh man, there's just so much strength. There's so much strength.
oh, yes. Yes. Yes.
And just think about, not only can you advocate, but you can collaborate with other organizations. You can
Mm,
collaborate with healthcare providers to, you know, talk about one thing that For the Rest of Us do. They are partnering with healthcare providers, and they're having
yes.
conversations about, okay, well, we need you to be more culturally sensitive to women of color when they are receiving treatment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Lobbying against policies that address barriers with health, the big elephant in the room, the health insurance.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. They're
So,
vultures.
oh,
Um,
absolutely, absolutely.
we
Say
know
it again.
this. Yeah,
Yeah,
we know this. We know
yeah,
this.
yeah,
It's terrible, but it's true. And again, just by um, getting to know these different groups, there are grants,
yeah.
there's financial aid,
Oh,
there are things. I've
yeah,
learned ways to fill out applications to where I
yeah.
don't get denied from financial support.
Oh,
Things
yeah.
like this I wouldn't know
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't have fellow um, breast. We call each other breasties,
Breasty. Yeah. Yes,
as
because you are
as a
my best
term.
friend now.
Yes, as a
I got
term
a
of
new best
endearment.
friend.
But if it wasn't for my breasties, I wouldn't have this knowledge. You know, I wouldn't be able to partake in these opportunities,
Yeah.
and that's important. And it's not to be taken lightly.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah. And lastly, one thing that you mentioned earlier in our conversation, self care. Advocate is a form of self care. It is self care because
It,
you are, in a sense, you are taking control of your. When you advocate, you are taking control of your health journey. You are advocating for not only yourself, but you are advocating for those that don't have that voice, for those that are private, that want to keep their information, their health private, but you are speaking for them. You're speaking for
mhm,
yourself. That's why it is so important that we take, like we said, we got to take care of us before we can take care of everyone else.
mhm.
And
And
doing,
it's so much more. Yes, self care. Get your nails done. Get a massage. Get your hair done. But it's so much more than that. It doesn't have to end at that surface level. Self
yeah,
care is asking your doctor, like, "Hey, am I gonna lose my right pinky toe or not? Like, what are we talking about here?" Right?
mhm,
Self
mhm,
care is, letting your friends and your family know, like, y'all, I'm sick. Self care is
yeah,
being vulnerable. Self care is allowing others to help you and
mhm.
realizing that you cannot face this world all by yourself.
Can't do it by yourself.
Eventually, you're gonna have to have somebody because the burden is too heavy,
Yes, absolutely.
and that's where we come in. We want to help you. We're here for you.
That absolutely, and for those that are listening, this is why you have organizations like For the Rest of Us. That's why you have online platforms and podcasts such as my Tesha Baddie to Baddie and Tisha's Tea Room. That's why you have all these grassroots organizations that are now, and I'm so thankful that they are now servicing. There are so many resources, so many online support groups, so many in-person support groups that are in your area. Just there's that you can get that support, and that is a form of self-care. That is taking
Yes,
control of your health journey,
it
and
is.
and
It
it is
is.
so very important that you do that.
It is. It is. It is. Yes.
Well, I
Yes.
want to thank you. Morgan, I can talk to you all day. We can
Well,
have this conversation all day
yeah,
long. I can talk to you all day. I loved it.
and
This
I'm not mad at that, and I'm happy about that.
this
Let's
was
talk about it.
a wonderful conversation. I want to thank you, Morgan, for taking the time to come on this wonderful podcast, Baddie to Baddie, and just having this talk with us about, healthcare advocacy, and just encouraging those that are listening, just something as small as just sharing your story with your girlfriend,
Yeah,
sharing it
yeah.
with your family.
Listen, and
And you are
I say
absolutely
this all the time, and again, small acts, but I say this, if I help one person, that's enough.
yes, absolutely.
That's a change. That's my life will not have been in vain. I've helped someone. And again, small acts speak so much volume.
Yes.
And Tesha, I thank you for your work, your time. I thank you for having this conversation. And I'm here to spread awareness in young Black women.
Hmm.
But awareness starts with exposure, and
Yes.
exposure starts with a conversation. Can we just have a conversation amongst
Absolutely.
sisters, amongst
We did.
girlfriends? Can we
We
just
did.
talk about it?
We sure did. And it was a wonderful conversation.
Yes,
Tell
yes,
the
yes,
audience,
yes.
tell the audience that's listening, how can they connect with you?
Listen, Dr.
'Cause we
Morgan
coming too.
Mitchell,
I'm connected. I don't know about you
please,
all, but I'm
no,
connected.
please do so. Please, I welcome connection. Even if you know somebody that knows somebody knows somebody, connect with me. You can catch me on social media platforms, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. You can email me. It's going to be Morgan Mitchell 395 at gmail.com. And I'm sure we can put that, in the chat or
We'll
somewhere.
get it.
Uh-huh. I'm always available. I love sharing my testimony. I love speaking to my community. And it's part of my divine purpose. When I first got diagnosed, I really didn't understand why this was happening to me, right? You feel like
Mhm.
you're being punished, Tesha.
Yeah.
I'm sure you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah. Oh, I felt the same
It's
way.
like it's
Yeah.
like what did I
What did
do
I do?
so bad to
Yep.
deserve this? And
Yes.
now that I'm
We'll
on
do
the
all
other side, I
that. Hmm.
can appreciate, like, okay, God, I can kind of see what you're doing now.
Yes.
I'm pretty much the perfect person that this happened to.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to be silent about it.
Absolutely.
I'm going to do whatever it takes. And by God, until I take my last breath, every young woman under the age of 40,
Hmm.
especially African American women,
Yes.
will understand the power of self exams and mammograms, and they will be doing that before 40 against the national and federal health guidelines that say wait until 40. No. Black breast cancer is different. We're not waiting for anybody.
That's right.
We've already lived that life. We're
Exactly.
taking care of ourselves,
We're taking
self
charge.
care in our people and our culture.
Yes.
And we're doing this at 30. That's what we're doing.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
I'm here to spread that message. And so thank you so much, Tesha, and for the rest of us. I really appreciate this
Well,
opportunity.
Morgan, you have been such a blessing. Thank you so very much. And for those that are listening, I hope that you enjoyed this chat because I know I have. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and make sure that you like and subscribe to Baddie to Baddie on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever you listen to your favorite podcast. And also check my platform out, Tisha's Tea Room, the place where conversations conquer cancer, on YouTube channel on YouTube, and as well as my social media on Facebook and on Instagram. That's Tisha's Tea Room. So again, thank you everyone for listening. Morgan, thank you so very much. We will talk soon,
Thank you for having me.
and peace and blessings and love to you.
Yes, yes, Miss Teacher. Thank you so much. Thank you.
This is another Baddie creation brought to you by For the Rest of Us. Don't forget to subscribe to Baddie to Baddie wherever you get your podcasts. And follow us on Facebook and Instagram at For the Breast of Us, on Twitter at The Breast of Us, and check us out online at breastofus.com. Thanks for listening.